And hold on. I'm trying to find if we're live or not because it says the chat's disabled. Hold on. Give me 1 second. I want to make sure we're actually rolling here. Are we live? Okay, we're live. All right. How's it going, everybody? It's your boy Wardy, and as you can see, we're back at it talking about all the latest in Mets land. We just got off of a nearly hour-long live show discussing the breaking news having to do with the Mets landing Luis Severino on that one-year, $13 million deal. We're going to talk plenty more on the Severino front on top of so many other things, topics getting into in tonight's live show with my good friend and a fantastic MLB reporter, that being Michael Marino. Michael's going to be sharing all of his latest insights on not only Severino, this signing, what potential moves could be at going forward, Yoshinobu Yamamoto updates, gaining updates on Jordan Montgomery, Eduardo Rodriguez, Shohei Ohtani, and so much more. So to everyone first chiming in, thank you all so much for being in here. Make sure to smash that like and subscribe button, especially for my man Michael making his WardyNYM debut here. But Mike, I'm going to let you take it away. Who are you for people that don't know?
My name is Michael Marino. You can find me on Twitter at MarinoMLB. Been reporting now for a few years. If you follow me, I've had some big ones here and there. Not one to brag, but definitely do, put in time to my reporting. I don't just make shit up, for lack of words. So when I hear it, it's usually true. So. That's how I operate. That's how I am. You can find me on Twitter. But yeah, that's just a little bit about myself.
So a little bit more about your background before we get into this. I want to know what kind of prompted you to start this semi-career path, if you will, right? Because you, of course, are a student currently, and you have certainly really rose to the occasion over the past two off seasons and breaking plenty of news and being on the money with all things Major League Baseball. So just kind of break down for me how this all kind of started to come about for you.
Yeah. I mean, I've always loved baseball. Grew up diehard Mets fan. Kind of have always been around baseball. I was kind of blessed to be around friends and family, some of which who were involved in Major League Baseball, decision makers, a few kind of friends, family who were involved in ownership. So I've kind of always been around the game, and that was a blessing for me because when I finally decided it was something I wanted to pursue and be in, I kind of had a head start. And from there, it's just been meeting new people. I've always felt like in this industry, you don't want to have enemies, you want to have allies. And so I've tried to be friendly and make as many friends as I can and kind of put myself out there. And I've been really lucky to get to where I am. And I'm grateful for everyone that supported me. And that's kind of how I've gotten to where I am, and I love it.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, especially when you look at your startup, it's not far off when I myself started covering the Mets. We kind of both have started this in similar time frames, and it's been great building this relationship with you, especially, as we get into everything happening this offseason. I know this is not only a big time for me as a content creator, it certainly is for you. This is your bread and butter. This is what you've been passionate about doing. So without further ado, let's just hop right in. And of course, everyone in the live chat, thank you all so much for being here. Continue to smash those buttons for your latest Mets news and rumors live show with MLB reporter Michael Marino here this Wednesday evening. But let's start with the Mets signing Luis Severino, right? When I saw the news, I told you off air, I was like, damn, okay, want to make sure we can still do this live show in time, and was able to make that happen, thankfully. So I've shared a lot of my thoughts on Severino, and I will continue to do that. But from you as a fellow fan and as someone, of course, known in the industry, how are you feeling about this move? How expected was it for you from all that and kind of what do you expect from this going forward?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're looking at 2023, it is what it is, right? Like he had a 7.4 ERA. He literally said, "I feel like I'm the worst pitcher in the world." So, and let's not sugarcoat it. Let's be real here. He had a rough year in 2023. He's still very talented. He's several years removed from his ace. The time when he was an ace. I think part of this, and maybe not a major part, was the relationship with Carlos Mendoza, the new Mets manager. Right. Have to believe there's some, I was told they have a working relationship, a good one. I don't know if they're best friends. I don't know. I didn't ask.
So they're not having slumber parties is what you're saying?
Don't think there's any slumber parties that have transpired.
Noted.
No. but he might have gotten him a job, which is potentially just as good, if not better.
Right.
I'll take $13 million instead of a slumber party. So, but I think you have to be realistic. It's a high upside, low risk signing. It's 1 year. The money is honestly a little bit rich compared to what I would have thought he would have made coming into the year. I think it was expected like I saw an article from Eno Saris, and I was kind of reading a quick background analytically of where he stands, and like his location's still really good. I don't think the stuff is as good as it was, but it's still good. It profiles pretty similarly to 2018, when he was kind of at his peak ace form. He had elbow surgery, or it was either elbow or shoulder, which is something to monitor. He had a rough year, but it's 1 year, and it's almost hard to go wrong with a 1 year deal. Everyone likes to talk about Bellinger. We know about a lot of 1 year flyers that might have not worked out, like Cody Bellinger. So you got to be realistic. This is probably a back end of the rotation addition.
Right.
This is not their headlining big signing. Forget about Yamamoto. We got Severino. Like, that's not what this is.
If
and
this
you got to
was
be
the
realistic
Ponzi regime, it most likely would have been.
Right.
So thankfully,
maybe we're all in. Maybe that's exactly right. So got to be realistic. Like, this is probably a high upside. Like, maybe they think of them as their 4 or their 5. What I've kind of tried to preach is their plan's really clear. Like, they want to still be involved with the high profile players. They're not shying from like putting out, we're interested in Yamamoto. At least to me, like, I know they're interested in Montgomery. Mayer says they're interested in Erod. Like, they're not looking to field a team of Luis Severinos. Like, they want those high profile players. But at least for 2024, like, if you look at the past 2 years, they kind of went all in on big profile free agents at every position to solve every hole. The longevity of that plan is pretty poor. Like, they literally traded away all of those big time acquisitions at the deadline, which tells you how it went. They want, if they like a high profile guy at a position of need, they're not going to be shy to add it, but they're not going to push themselves like, hey, we think third base is an area where we can improve. They're not just going to be like, Matt Chapman might be good, so let's give him $200 million. Like, that's not how they're operating. And they're going to take a 1 year flyer on a high profile guy here and there to supplement the higher profile moves, in hopes that over the next coming years, over time, like, those 1 year guys will phase out. And when they're truly ready to compete, and I just got a tweet, Mets remain active, working on another deal, from Andy Martino.
Okay, there you go. Some breaking news.
And
we may have someone on the live show tonight. We'll see.
I'm going to put out Eduardo Rodriguez is someone I would monitor.
Okay.
I've kind of continually pressed, put that out there. But I know for a fact that Erod's timeline is relatively soon. Just got to field some texts.
Yeah, you go ahead. I'll pick up from here. So, yes, seems like there's a great chance we're going to find out more Mets news tonight. And just as I was saying in the Severino live show, this is the first domino to fall. And usually when the floodgates open, it goes fast, right? So no one should be shocked if we see another move either tonight, early tomorrow. Eduardo Rodriguez is certainly someone that I would welcome to this rotation, should it be him. However, my question to you is, if the Mets were to say land, hypothetically, Eduardo Rodriguez, would this basically be the sign of saying, hey, we're signing him, we're not going to be letting Jordan Montgomery, but we're still going to remain active on Yoshinobu Yamamoto? Where do you stand regarding that?
I'm sorry. Give me like 1 minute.
Okay, go ahead. I know. It's fine. Yeah, I get it.
This is the chaos part of the offseason.
For those that don't know, Michael is our version of Jeff Passan right now, so he's got a lot of work to do, so I'm going to leave him be. But my question, though, really would be if the Mets do land, say, Erod. Okay, does that mean because he profiles similarly to Jordan Montgomery, both veteran southpaws, or these guys that could very well find themselves being in a situation where it's one over the other? I'd imagine that would be the case. I'm not opposed to Erod whatsoever. I would prefer Jordan Montgomery between the two because Monty has more of a consistent background that I find more appealing. And, of course, the fantastic run he had to go all the way to win a World Series after being dealt to the Texas Rangers this season. But Erod is coming off of a career-best season in his final year with the Detroit Tigers with a 3.3 ERA. He was going to be traded to the LA Dodgers by the trade deadline. He said no. He just wasn't feeling like moving his family. That has changed since then, though, because he just didn't want to do an in-season change, and he will be signing elsewhere potentially imminently. So, yes, well aware on the Martino stuff, guys. We are waiting to find word should the Mets make another move, and if they do, then we will, of course, discuss it and pivot as needed. And if that doesn't happen until after this live show is done, then we will, of course, discuss that then as well. So,
I'm good. Okay. I'm back. I'm good. Andy says it's a lower profile player. So I don't think it's Eduardo Rodriguez.
Is it who I just, the text I sent you right before we went live, do you think it might be that?
It might. I'm thinking maybe Manuel Margot.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I'm keeping tabs. I mean, they were at one point, I was told, close right
before. Michael, I don't know what just happened with Marino, but he just cut out. So let's see if we can try to get him back in the show. Bear with me, everybody. Michael, oh, you hate to see it. Give me 1 second to see if we can bring him back in here. Oh, he's back. Okay. Michael, you hear me?
I'm here.
Yeah, you cut out for 2 seconds, but you're good. So
keep
saying what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, I know at one point right before the non-tender deadline, they were close on Manuel Margot. Them and the Yankees were in talks. This is said to be lower profile. If it's lower profile than Luis Severino, then it might be like not even a headline. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm just taking guesses.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. That's what you'll tend to see, especially if you've been a follower of my content at all. That tends to happen quite often, taking guesses and assumptions for us to be plenty of times proven wrong, because that's how the offseason usually works. But so we've talked about Sevy, and again, if you want to see a more thorough breakdown of Luis Severino, highly implore you all to check out my live show that came out right before this one. Talked about everything on the Severino front, so this is kind of more of a rehash and touching up why the Mets did this. Of course, aside from the Carlos Mendoza connection, him being in New York as is, I'm sure that was appealing to him to keep his family staying put, just moving boroughs from one to the other. And for the Mets here, now they get, a medium risk, high upside starter to be in the back end of the rotation to compete there. And at absolute worst, if he doesn't pan out, Steve Cohen has shown that willingness to part with guys, even if he has to eat a little money or whatever it may be. So I'm not overly concerned on Severino as long as the Mets make the proper acquisitions as well to this rotation by adding at minimum another 2 starters, if not 3, is what we're all expecting and looking to see. So should that not happen, I'll be the first to call out for Stearns' head, but I do not see a world where that would be the case. So any final remarks on Severino before we kind of pivot more so into Yoshinobu Yamamoto and the updates on his front?
I do have an update, and it's Andy Martino, Joey Wendle. The Mets are in talks with utility player Joey Wendle.
Okay, that's fine. Random, but fine.
Okay, we can relax. Everyone take a deep breath. It's Joey Wendle, who's a good player. He's a good role player. I take him over Luis Guillorme personally, but okay. Now we can deep breaths. I can relax. That's when it gets crazy.
Right.
Because I just got about 50 texts at the same time saying, "Who the hell is it?" And then like 30 people texting suggestions of who it may be with all different names. So, all right, Joey Wendle.
If the Mets sign Joey Wendle, I'm not stopping this stream to go and set up a different stream. We're just going to talk about Joey Wendle, because Joey Wendle is nothing more than a utility guy that would be filling in that Luis Guillorme role. They just see clearly more upside there than they did with Guillorme, which is why they parted with him. I don't really think there's too much that needs to be out there, aside from the guy not wearing batting gloves, which is badass in today's game.
Yeah,
Like,
I would agree with you there.
yeah, I don't think there's really too much. So Joey Wendle, we'll see if that does end up happening. Love Joey Wendle, better Yorma. Exactly, just an upgrade. And yes, he didn't have a good season last year with Miami, but he is a guy that's more in a utility role. Again, had a down year with the average, just looking at his numbers right now, but nothing where it's like, oh my goodness gracious, how dare the Mets go out of their way to get someone like him. I think what'll be interesting is obviously because this will be a role player type where he can play all over the diamond, but it's going to be what happens beyond this move, which could we see more than just a Joey Wendle potentially tonight? Maybe. Like, I have a feeling over the next 24, 48 hours, there's going to be a lot on the Mets front, prior to winter meetings. Would you agree or disagree with that notion?
I mean, here's what I'll say. I don't want to predict. Obviously, I said Erod's timeline's pretty soon. Like, I think he goes reasonably soon. I don't know about tonight, maybe. I don't know about tomorrow. Like, I think in the coming days. Like, it's funny, and I don't want to be the person to say that, but like, this feels like a Brewers offseason, like, to start. And obviously, it won't be like they're involved in high-profile guys, but Joey Wendle and Luis Severino, if you told me they were Milwaukee Brewers this upcoming year, like, I would not be shocked in the slightest. Clearly, these are like they're banking on maybe high, like, I don't even know if Joey Wendell's high upside, but like role players, like this is what they're trying to get ahead and build depth. You look at the Mets last year, they had no depth. That was like a problem for them.
Big problem.
Was Vogelbach like destroyed the bench. They had no versatility. And in terms of their pitching, like, no one really likes to talk about it, but like Trevor Williams ended up being like a huge loss for them.
I said that heading into the past offseason. I was very adamant about Williams returning, wanting him to return. And I knew he wasn't going to because he was going to field offers as a starting pitcher, just like Seth Lugo, exact same situation. And it's unfortunate, though, because the Mets have been in desperate need since then for that swing man that can confidently, consistently go out there, either needing to start a game and open the first couple innings or have him come in and eat those garbage time innings that happen from time to time and do it confidently where the Mets can actually stay in the game. Say they're down 4 runs early, you throw in Shrev, he gives you 3.5 of either scoreless or 1 earned run ball, and then you can find yourself still in that ball game. Mets didn't have that this past year, and they've struggled to try to get the Petersons, the McGills, etc. of the world in that more transitionary role. It just hasn't worked yet. So to your point, that actually brings up a great point. If this is something that the Mets want to go down, what type of players out there could you see them maybe acquiring that could fill that need? Should they go out and do just that?
It's hard. I mean,
anyone that crosses the line?
Not for depth pitchers. I mean, those are like analytics says this guy might bounce back. Like, no one. It was hard to predict Trevor Williams. Although Jared Porter was said to like him like a year before, and then they finally got him. It's hard to predict. I mean, I'll give you like other predictions, but I'm probably not going to be the guy to predict who they bring in as like the 6th starting pitcher. I mean, those are pretty hard to predict without having like exact names said to you, which I have not. So I'm not going to make it up. But I mean, obviously, like, I'll give you a few guys to keep an eye on, just generally speaking.
Sure.
I would say keep an eye on Kevin Kiermaier, just because that's the profile type player they're looking to add.
As 4th outfielder type, or more in an everyday role?
I mean, their left fielder right now is who? Like
DJ Stewart, Jeff
DJ
McNeil.
Stewart? I doubt it. Like we'll see. Maybe 4th outfielder, but potentially, unfortunately, 3rd. Like, he's an option. Margot is an option I would keep an eye on. Justin Turner for a DH is a guy I would keep an eye on. Yamamoto, obviously everyone talks about. I would keep an eye on Montgomery, who I've heard they're really interested in. Mayer said Erod. I would keep an eye on him, especially with the timetable that seems to be moving quickly. Those are guys I would all keep an eye on. I don't know about 6th starting pitcher, but I'll give you those guys.
Okay, fair enough. So let's pivot back to Yamamoto here for a second, because his market has been nothing short of the hottest thing imaginable. So for someone who's been on the know, across the board, What is his landscape looking like right now with this market, and where do you believe the Mets currently stand and their chances of acquiring him?
Man, I mean, it's been chaos. Like I haven't seen more teams have FOMO than they do right now with him. And I think it's a product of them missing the first time on Shohei Ohtani. Like I think that's inevitably part of it. You look back and like it was considered like by some a rich deal at the time. And it was like what 70 million. Obviously there was the posting fee, but like that's pennies compared to what his value ended up being. And now you're looking at it, and he's not going to be pennies. Like I will tell you that. Like this guy's going to cost some serious chunk of change. I think potentially over 250 million, which for a Japanese player is like unheard of.
And with the posting fee, that's easily north of 300.
We're talking 300,
yeah,
right? So that's where it's really tricky. And so, I don't know. I'll give you some insight here. Someone who I know who was having a conversation with ownership, pretty much asked ownership up front, do you like Yoshinobu Yamamoto? And the line he got back was like something along the lines of like, I'm a sucker for a good deal. I don't know if there's a good deal here. Like, I think you're going to pay his price. And that we don't know what their willingness to pay that price is.
Right.
If you asked 6 months ago, maybe you're thinking 150 and that's a bargain. And obviously Senga now it looks like a bargain. Like they're not going to be fooled again here. Like Senga was a great sign. Now that looks like a bargain. Otani was like the steal of the century. And now there's a guy who's supposed to be better than Senga. He can't hit, obviously, but he has top 5 in baseball ace upside. That guy's going to get paid. And so we need to see, like, it's great they're still in. Like, we've heard nothing about, like, them being afraid of the price tag, which is a great sign for their willingness to pay his price. But what we've also heard is everyone else is still in. And that's a problem for them because
right.
If there's 5 teams that are willing to pay his price, well, what is that price when that starts? And then, boom, it can get to unheard of numbers where Stearns is just looking at it like, I love the player, but I don't know if I can get over whatever that number is. And we just don't know. To assume one way or the other is tough. And I think that's why they're at the very least, when he's looking at a mid-December at the earliest sign, and Robert Murray just said there is a deal between Joey
Wendle.
There
you
go.
And the Mets. The biggest news tonight for the New York Metropolitans signing Joey Wendle, likely a 1-year deal. If I'm going to go on a limb and say that, going to go further to say that's probably no more than just a mill or two. Am I wrong? I feel like we're going to find ourselves in that category.
That's my guess. These are depth additions. But I'll kind of resume from where I left off. The problem with Yamamoto, not only is the price tag, but the day, like his timeline. And this is what, I've been trying to explain is like, if the guy signs in mid-December, all right, so he signs in mid-December, what is in between? Well, I'm hearing Erod's timeline might be relatively soon. I'm also hearing that there's a bunch of guys that are probably going to go in or right after the winter meetings, which are December 3rd to the 5th. So you might miss out on almost the entire landscape of the starting pitchers by the time Yamamoto is signing. They don't want to be the last team to get starters. That's why one of the reasons they're going out early and getting Severino. So they know they have bodies in the rotation. It's difficult for them because they're in a hard position where they want a premier arm. And I don't, call it what you want. Like, Monty's a great arm. Definitely a solid arm. Erod's a solid arm. They're showing interest in both. So part of me wonders if they're wary of being the last team to add a starting pitcher. And if you miss out on Monty, then you miss out on Erod, let's say. Well, now do you have to pay Yamamoto's price? And what is it? And that's
right.
where you don't want to be the last to the table. And they're trying to be proactive here, make sure they have bodies in the rotation and guys they like. And while they might like Yamamoto more than Eduardo Rodriguez or Jordan Montgomery, like, it's not a sure thing they sign him. And by the time, if they wait it out, like, they might screw themselves. And that's why I think they're trying to be proactive here and express interest in kind of all of those upper tier pitchers.
So the Mets are trying to make sure that no stone goes unturned because of how how unpredictable this current market is, which is exactly how Stearns should be operating. I'd like to make that very clear. The last thing we want is the Mets to, potentially strike out on Yamamoto, strike out on Monty, and then Erod might be the only one left, or maybe not even him. Like Shota Imanaga is a name that we haven't heard too much of since he's been posted, but the Mets have scouted. That's a sneaky name where I wonder what the level of interest is there for the Mets, who's predicted to get a similarly formatted contract to what Kodai Senga got from early rumblings. Anything you can share regarding Shoto, or really not much to this point?
Don't really have much there.
Okay.
Don't really have much there. I mean, and I've kind of put feelers out and not a lot back. So that's something I'll be keeping tabs on. I wouldn't be shocked if they added a starter before Yamamoto of the ilk maybe of Yamamoto or a little bit under, whether that be a Monty or a Nerod. But then I also wonder how that impacts their approach of Yamamoto. Like, if they sign Erod, if they sign, Montgomery, like, are they out on Yamamoto now? Like, it's not impossible.
I feel
but
like
also
it's a comfortability level at that point where there's a lack of desperation. Should they land at least one, if not both, of what you just said?
I would agree. Oh, here's your Wendle numbers: 2 million plus performance bonus.
There you go. What did I say?
1-2 mil on the dot.
On the dot. They may as well hire me at this point. You look at the numbers. Just jumping to Joey Wendle real quick. I will do a video on him, maybe late tonight, to post tonight or tomorrow. People aren't going to be going crazy over my lack of aggressiveness with posting a Joey Wendle video, I feel like, considering we're talking about now. But Wendle, this past season, age 33, 112 games played, a 212 average, 248 OBP, a 306 slug. We like to call that on WardyNYM terms a schmuck, but hopefully he has himself a solid 2024 campaign in a utility role here with the Mets. Really not much more to add. He's just known for his defensive ability, his upside. Again, he plays all over the diamond, and he was still a plus defender this past year, which is impressive, especially when you look at Joey. This past season he played every single game at shortstop, but he can play second, third, short. He can even handle first if he needs to. So he just has that ability to be diverse with his defensive sense there, and he will be your Gourmet replacement. And you can make an argument: do you feel that he is comfortably a upgrade from Luis Gourmet? Because when you look at his track record, you would say yes, absolutely. Like, if you look at his career numbers, even last season alone, a solid productive year. His breakout year was 2021 with the Rays, because they always make something out of nothing. He had himself 11 home runs, 73 runs scored, 54 RBIs, a 265 average, 319 OBP, 422 slug. He's not going to be like that with the Mets because he won't be playing every day. But, in comparing and contrasting, do you think that this is an understood pivot here because they drop Gourmet and say, hey, Joey's going to be our utility guy for 2024?
I'll shoot you straight. I mean, I think he's not great.
No, he's not.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you need guys like him to fill out the roster. What I'll preach to Mets fans, I would be patient with your evaluation of David Stearns. I don't think Joey Wendle and Luis Severino is an accurate representation of the rest of the Mets offseason. I mean, I definitely think starting the offseason with Severino and Wendle is going to get some type of reaction that's probably, for the most part, not positive, but they will add good players this offseason, fear not. But just like you said, utility player, defensive sub late in games. Like, this is not a guy who's going to be taking meaningful at bat, hopefully, for the Mets in 2024.
So before we get into a couple more key topics, I don't want this to be too long-winded of a show, but we have over 700 concurrent viewers. We already hit 100 likes. Help us get to 300 guys. And also, please make sure to follow Michael Marino on Twitter at Marino MLB. We got Jeff in the chat basically questioning who the hell you are. Michael's saying you don't know nothing. So could you do us a favor, Michael, and just throw out one example of you being on the money with a report, either breaking news yourself or initial rumblings that have come to fruition because of you over the past couple of years? Just give one example. I know plenty, but I want to hear from you which one you'll pick.
All right. Okay. Mets front office shakeup. One. Rockies trade for Mike Moustakas. That was a weird one. There's obviously
Chad Green, Toronto Blue Jays. That's
Chad Green, Toronto Blue Jays. Yeah. No, there's I don't want to, I'm not one to brag, but
no, it's not bragging when you just explaining what you've done, like
this is true. This is true. Yes, I have reported a fair share of things in
and I hope people understand too. Don't get me wrong, I'm a content creator. We love the rumor mill and we love to talk about hypotheticals at times, but I'm also the type that has a level and a sense of credibility. I wouldn't be bringing Michael on if, one, we didn't have the good relationship we have, but two, if I didn't notice the positive track record he's had over the past 2+ years. So I would like to reiterate that I'm not someone that just brings on anyone that goes out of their way to tweet some stuff that may be at times common knowledge, because Michael has quite literally been on the money a lot, and I'm very grateful for the bond here. So now let's talk about,
appreciate you,
of course, Yamamoto. So what you're saying is you just have question marks as to where the Mets stand because they're very adamant about adding this rotation and fast, and I 100% agree with that. Yamamoto, for me, I think the Mets are 1,000% heavily in on him. But personally, my biggest concern with Yamamoto, and I could be completely wrong and off here, is what happens with Shohei Ohtani. I think Ohtani's market, it could really be the key factor here. Now, there's belief that Ohtani may sign prior to winter meetings, if not in the beginning of winter meetings. We've heard a lot of rumblings. You yourself, of course, have been reporting as of late. And usually when you see an Ohtani, these things start to get leaked out more. You're led with the belief that that domino may be falling sooner than later, because they've been doing a really good job on trying to keep that hush-hush the best they can to this point. So when looking at Shohei, let's talk hypothetically. He signed somewhere that isn't the LA Dodgers and isn't the Mets. And I think that very well could be a possibility depending on how this plays out. Should that happen, we know the Dodgers not only love Ohtani, have in part allowed Trey Turner to walk the past year to build up that salary, that payroll, to have it available for him. We know they love Yamamoto. So my concern is if Ohtani doesn't go to the Dodgers, you might see a huge desperation tactic by the Dodgers to just go completely all in on Yamamoto and do something where maybe that is out of line and what the Mets were comfortably doing. Or maybe even Yamamoto may have a preference to be with the Dodgers, knowing that he's closer to home. Essentially, when you look at geography, that's why they always prefer out west a lot of these Japanese players. And, I'm sure he's heard great things from Shohei to a degree on what it's like playing in California in itself. So that's my big concern with Yamamoto, probably more than anything at the moment. It's if Ohtani doesn't go to the Dodgers, that might be an X factor. And then the Mets may find themselves in a spot where they had their best foot forward, a very valiant effort, but they just fell short because there was a preference elsewhere.
I mean, there was a rumor going around a few weeks ago that he preferred the West Coast. And kind of here's my stance there. An extra $10 million in the East Coast is better than not in the West. So okay. I think money will talk here. Whoever the high bidder, there's a pretty good chance they're the winner. And so it really just comes down to the money. Like what you're saying about the Dodgers is entirely true. Like if Ohtani, let's say, signs with the Cubs, the Blue Jays, the Angels, who my understanding is all of which are like potentially very legit players, that, now they're equipped with so much cash that they set aside for Ohtani that, like you said, like, boom. It's also not necessarily their brand to just be like throwing out money left and right,
True.
Like recklessly. Like
right.
They are very strategic here. But he's also like one of the best options in the free agent pool. And maybe the strategic path is paying him more than everyone else. So I would say what you're saying is totally right. Like if they miss on Ohtani, they probably will be very interested in Yamamoto, but they're not the only team in here. Like the Yankees are also really interested. They're also really interested in Juan Soto. Like the Red Sox are really interested. Like there's so many teams that I know of that are interested in Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and that's what makes it tricky because they can all say, we need Yoshinobu Yamamoto, but only one of them's getting him. And so there's going to be a lot of unhappy campers. And, to just assume the Mets can't be one of them is, the same could be said for all the other ones. So that's why it's tricky. Like, there's so many suitors there. If you want to be the high bidder for Jordan Montgomery or Eduardo Rodriguez, it's probably a lot easier than being the high bidder for, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Like, they're just different in that respect.
Okay, so for future reference going forward, because I'm sure this will not be the last podcast that you're on this offseason, not whatever you're saying, Yoshinobu Yamamoto. I don't mean to be a dick. I just got to correct you
Good.
so you know, because I think about Yoshida right away when I see his name. So I don't blame you, but just wanted to correct you so that way you know going
It's good
forward.
because I definitely butchered the first and last names.
Okay,
so
there you go. Hey, if I had a nickel
appreciate
for
the
the
heads
amount of
up.
times I messed up names that the Mets were connected to, I'd have a lot of nickels. Matt Ibby with the $2 holla says, put some respect on Mario's name. Shout out to Matt. Speaking of Matt, you were just on his show Until Mets Do Us Part. So everyone, please make sure to check them out wherever you get your podcasts. They do a great job, both Matt and John alike. Really, really awesome Mets fans and come out with some fun content. So happy to have you in here, Matt. Thank you for the donation. Shout out to everyone in the live chat. Again, we have over 700 concurrent viewers. Continue to smash that like and subscribe on. Getting so close to our next short-term goal of 25,000 subscribers. And please, highly implore you all to follow Michael on Twitter at Marino MLB. So we talked about Yamamoto, and there's a lot going on that front. I'm still very optimistic, but of course, naturally, until we kind of find out further reporting, if we do that, saying, hey, the Mets are, a top 2 team or top 3 team, like when, aside from what we've heard at this point, when things really intensify, which I think will happen, winter meetings and then post-winter meetings, I think Yamamoto is going to wait a little bit still. Could be wrong. Then until then, I'm going to have certain reservations, which are the ones that we just discussed. But Jordan Montgomery, Eduardo Rodriguez, both guys that would fit the bill in this rotation plenty. Erod, as I mentioned, certainly an upside guy, 3.3 ERA this past year. Downside to him is, of course, making sure that he can stay healthy on a consistent basis. And 2, just what you're getting in him, a guy that usually is more so an average of around a 4 ERA pitcher, is going to get well overpaid this MLB offseason. In comparison to Jordan Montgomery, I think I'll always kind of prefer Monty slightly because I like the consistency with Monty, and I love the big market aspect. I understand Erod was with Boston, but you can't compare Boston and New York. They're animals with the fan bases in their own right, but they're still different markets and how they're portrayed by the media especially. So my question to you is, when you evaluate both the interest in Montgomery and Eduardo Rodriguez, do you think that one maybe fits the bill over the other, or do you think either would be certainly a nice addition to this rotation?
I mean, here's what I'll say about both of them. And I've watched a ton of both. I watched Eduardo Rodriguez live in Detroit during Justin Verlander's debut, and Erod just shoved. It was like 8 innings, maybe not even 1 earned. It was impressive. He had everything going for him. I've seen both. At their peak, Eduardo Rodriguez is better. In terms of consistency, year to year, not even that game to game, Montgomery is one of the best in the league. You just know what you're getting with him. It's very consistent. The peaks aren't as high. Like, he's just a good pitcher that will be a good pitcher more often than not for 180 innings. And there's so much value in that, and I think goes up like unsaid. Like, you know what you're getting for the most part in Jordan Montgomery. That's why he has value. So,
right.
I think it depends what you're looking for. Like, I think they need dudes. Like, they need guys who they know they can count on. They don't have enough of those guys. And, like, I love Kodai Senga. Like, he's awesome.
Oh, he's everything you could have hoped he'd be.
Exactly. He's a high variance pitcher who had an unbelievable season. Part of me worries because, like, there's literally a clause in his contract about if he needs Tommy John surgery.
Yes.
He missed time in Japan 2 years ago with elbow soreness. Like, at some point in his 5-year contract, he will probably deal with some elbow-related injury.
And there's a world where it could be as soon as next year, God forbid. Like, we can't say that's impossible.
Right. And right now he's the ace of the rotation, right? And you saw what happened last year when Justin Verlander isn't ready to start the season, and it's just like, like the whole world starts falling apart.
Yeah.
Right? So you need guys you can count on, and Jordan Montgomery, maybe I'm cursing him, but he's taking, the bump every 5 days, and he's probably going to give you 6 or 7 innings, 1 or 2 runs, maybe 3, and he's going to keep you in the ball game. Is he going to lock him down? And you're like, that's the best pitching performance I've ever seen. Unlikely, but there's value in knowing that every 5 days you got a guy who's going to march out there and give you a good start and keep you in a ballgame.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And as we're breaking this down, it really makes me think of what will be biggest priority for the Mets here. We know how much they love Yamamoto, but given just the holes they have to fill in this rotation, it wouldn't shock me if they end up prioritizing quantity over quality in that sense, just because Yamamoto is such an anomaly from everyone else. Like, he is truly in a class of his own, the same way Ohtani is, right? Like, so when I evaluate in that way, yeah, I can understand both sides of the coin. Say if the Mets land Yamamoto, but then the other stars that they have after that are to lesser degrees, versus getting more B and some C options where, yes, you're not going to have that frontline guy in which you're hoping Yamamoto. You're not going to have that potential, that success for potentially the next decade plus, but you are getting guys that can help provide now and for the future, at least for the next couple years. So it's really going to come down to what's biggest priority too. Like Yamamoto, what is so appealing about him and what checks off the boxes isn't just his ridiculous talent, a guy that is being considered for Cy Young already when he hasn't even pitched a game in the bigs. He's going to be one of the highest paid players in baseball already. It's remarkable, the type of market he has, but it's his age, 25 years of age. The Mets are focusing beyond just 2024. How does he not fit the bill for this team? So I'm really curious to see just how all in they go for him, and two, if there is a level of desperation or not, because we've seen desperation with the Mets in years past, and we've learned that while those moves on paper looked awesome, they've kind of come back to bite them in the ass a little bit. They went through trials and tribulations there already. So an interesting way to evaluate Yamamoto and his future. But as we get close to wrapping things up, I did want to ask you on Shohei Ohtani, are the Mets ever going to be a heavy player in him prior to this offseason beginning? Because over this past year, we've heard a lot of rumblings, a lot of connections. Of course, everyone's saying the Mets are absolutely top dog for Ohtani just because of Steve Cohen, the money he has. And then you add in when they did have Epler, that seemed like that could be a factor that played at least a smidge in the Mets' favor. Nothing drastic. I'm going to go on a limb and say Ohtani isn't going to weigh a $500 million contract on just a guy that helped him sign with the Angels. But that connection didn't hurt. Now that connection's gone. And since then, I feel like we've seen more pessimism than optimism on the Ohtani front. So what can you share in regards to the Mets' interest or lack thereof on his market?
Totally. I mean, here's what I'll say. Like, I know of several other suitors who to this point are very interested in him and have conveyed they're very interested in him. I wouldn't rule the Mets out. I wouldn't rule them out on Soto. But I also wouldn't hold your breath on any of them. Like, I've talked to enough people to get a good idea of the landscape of Ohtani. None of them are telling me, like, keep an eye on the Mets. Like, that doesn't mean they're out, though. And that's, like, these things are so fluid that maybe the price doesn't amount to the number that everyone had in mind, and they're in. And so that's how, like, interest, it comes and goes. That's just kind of how that works. So, like, right now, I wouldn't consider them among the top 4 suitors for him.
Right.
If 4 suitors I would keep an eye on, the Blue Jays, the Angels, the Dodgers, and the Cubs. Like, those are 4 teams who I know are in on him. I haven't heard the same about the Mets, but that doesn't mean they're out. But that also doesn't mean, like, who knows? They might, like, I would just temper your expectations. Like, I don't want people thinking they're in or out. But I just know of other teams who are extremely serious about their interest in him. And I have yet to hear the same about the Mets. And until that's the case, I'm not going to be comfortable coming up here and being like, the Mets have a great shot at Shohei Ohtani.
Exactly. Yeah. And as a content creator, when you hear your team you're covering is connected to the best player on the planet, you want to milk that for as long as you possibly can. But even I haven't done that this offseason because I'm trying to be as genuine about this as possible. And the reality is we have not seen nearly enough indications to believe that the Mets are a top player here. We know they have the money. We know they're interested, but we also know that unlike any other team in baseball right now, the Mets have 11 more spots to fill on their roster. They just rounded out their front office again for a second time under Steve Cohen. They just did the exact same thing with their coach coaching staff. So my counter is, even if the Mets say do have the highest offer on the table, why in God's name would Shohei Ohtani actually want to come here versus potentially the Dodgers, for example? The Cubs is an interesting one to me because we know that they were an exception to him kind of, even though that they're not technically East Coast, it's not like you're dealing with nice, pretty weather there all the time either. But going back to 2018, when he was first scouting and weighing options, the Cubs were a team that was in that mix, and that interest has always been there. And now Craig Counsell's their manager. I will say this, it'll definitely sting a bit having an offseason where us Mets fans had hopes and dreams of both Counsell and Ohtani, and watch that end up being the case. But with the Chicago Cubs, something no one really expected until kind of last minute. Jed Hoyer said, F it, we're going all in right now. Now feels like the time. I respect the aggressiveness on their part, but it doesn't change the fact that it'll leave a slight sour taste in my mouth as a fan should that happen.
No, totally. And, I think we'll kind of see how this thing plays out. Curious to see kind of how that goes. But he's going to get paid. A lot of interested suitors. Hard to definitely rule out the Mets at this point. But I just sense kind of like they're focused on adding pitching, at least right now.
And I think his injury definitely plays a factor in his evaluation, and more than maybe people seem to realize. Because yes, of course, he can bounce back from Tommy John, and I feel like if anyone's going to do it, at a good pace, it would be him, just because of how an anomaly of a player he's been. But this is his second go around of it already, and with that uncertainty in itself, $500+ million for a guy that may very well be more your standalone DH. Granted, could easily be the best hitter in baseball for the next 5, 6, 7 years. But is that going to be worthwhile in the end? Is that going to be enough? I feel like you could argue there may almost be more risk involved in that situation should he not get back to the pitcher that he was. So that is a factor. Right. If you're wanting to play devil's advocate, that is one of those things that pops in my mind.
Right. And then the devil's advocate to the devil's advocate is, do you want to be the guy in the front office who told the team, let's not get Shohei Ohtani?
Right.
And then he's Shohei Ohtani.
Oh, my God. There's exactly. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't in this situation. So, Unfortunately, that's where the Mets find themselves in. But rest assured, should we find out anything more on his front, we will discuss it as needed. Mike, thank you for a $2 donation. Mike says, Mets just signed utility man from the Marlins. Yes, that is Joey Wendle. We already talked briefly about it earlier in the show. So highly implore you guys to, go back and watch that if you haven't already. Jacob Green, $2 holla. Thank you so much. Why are the Mets not going big on Ohtani? It's not necessarily if they're going big or not. We just don't know. And, give Mets credit. They have done a pretty good job so far on keeping things hush-hush. I will say this, though, the Severino connection we knew about the past 2 weeks, and that did come to fruition. Joey Wendle, no one expected whatsoever. Not that we should be comparing Shohei Ohtani to Joey Wendle in these type of sweepstakes, but point stands is David Stearns has done a pretty good job at this point on keeping things internal. And Ohtani, it wouldn't shock me the slightest if we do find out in the end, regardless of where he goes, that the Mets were a top dog. It further wouldn't shock me if they end up still having the highest offer on the table and say Ohtani decides to go elsewhere. I think that's actually a pretty realistic possibility. So the interest has always been there with Shohei, but it's about, one, what is the likelihood? What is his interest in even coming to the East Coast, even if you give him the highest offer? He scoffed at the notion the first time. Why would it be any different now, right? So those are just things that we have to weigh, not only as fans, but people that are involved in the industry in itself. So final questions, remarks I got for you, Michael, before we get out of here. Is there any other tidbits you can share on any other potential targets for the Mets that you think could be a nice fit, either because of rumblings you personally heard or just preference as a fan, where you'd be like, hey, I would actually like to go see them go out there, whether it's either for certain relievers, position players in the free agent trade market, just latest thoughts on everything as a whole with this club.
I gave you a few guys to monitor, Kiermaier and Justin Turner and those guys. I mean, I'll kind of do a run through of some of the things I've heard. And Penn Murphy, who
Mets
I believe
legend. Mets
just signed
legend.
with the Braves on a major league deal. So he's making his rounds. But I'll kind of give a quick rundown of just some things to watch. Get asked a lot about Glasnow. I've gotten a pretty good sense of Glasnow's market. I just don't think the Mets are going to be players there. What I was told was I think he's got either 1 or 2 years left on his deal.
One.
They're not looking 1 year. That's right. So they're not looking for if they're doing a 1 year holdover, it's like a Luis Severino, like a 1 year, $13 million, low risk. like high upside proposition. Like I don't think they're looking to pay like a rental price for and give up prospects for 1 year of Tyler Glasnow when maybe in their minds like they'll be more ready to compete in 2025.
And the risk
Other guys,
factor too. I'm sorry not to cut you off, but like
no,
career high 120 innings this year. Coming off a TJ,
right,
like great guy. Looks exactly like Killian Murphy. Like very very awesome human being. All things considered, love his arsenal. But to everything you just said, like for a team that's focusing beyond just 2024, they're not the same team that's trying to throw these
right,
short-term high AV deals like they were the past couple of years to Verlander and of course
exactly,
Scherzer.
right. And so, I would. And I asked, I think there's more interested suitors elsewhere, at least right now. And his market is like constantly evolving. Like it evolved today, I
Right.
was told. So like there's new teams calling every day about Tyler Glass now, yet to hear the Mets. And that's one that I've been pretty plugged into. Other things to watch, let me think. Soto. Yankees, I would watch. Any team that's rich with pitching prospects that wants to make a splash, I would watch. What does that mean? Mariners, who knows? I mean, like, I would just watch teams that have the pitching prospects and the desire to add someone like Juan Soto. I'll add the Braves. They're looking more at trade options right now.
Dylan Cease looks like a name that could be going there soon.
Dylan Cease looks like a name that could be going there soon. I would keep an eye on him for sure. That's what I heard. Erod, I heard, could go soon. Mets are a team to watch. At one point, Boston and Atlanta. I don't think anything's imminent with Boston or Atlanta with Erod, at least as of right now. But I know of Mets interest as reported by Mayor. You got anything else? I'm trying to think. You got any?
Yeah,
Name some players. I'll give you quick hitters.
Lucas Giolito.
Haven't heard anything.
Yeah, he's that market's been dead quiet, I feel like, to this point. I haven't heard anything when having discussions with you or anyone for that matter. We see Road with the $2 donation says, could you see the Mets getting involved with Cease? I've been crying for it, but I'm not seeing it.
I don't think so. I haven't heard it, but who knows? I haven't really asked enough about Cease, honestly. I just heard Atlanta likes him. So I won't venture to say no, but I just don't think it's like what they're trying to do. The Orioles were like super in on Dylan Cease. They put together a super strong package, which I bet if you ask them now, they wish they took, because I think his value is a lot higher then than it is now.
Do you think there's still an interest level from the O's?
I'm sure there is. I mean, like, no one has told me they're out. So
and they certainly have the assets. I'm taking O's farm every day of the week over at ATL right now, but the Braves work their devil magic every single year, so surely they're going to land him.
No, you're not wrong. Is there any other players? Think about relevant players. I'll shoot off if I got anything.
Okay, we'll stay on the Orioles topic for just a second. Hayes and Santander. Could you see
haven't heard anything.
Could you see either of those two trade this offseason, or do you think that would be a silly notion as of now?
I don't think so. Just because they're contenders. Like, I don't think they're trying to offload. Obviously, I know, like, I think they have a surplus of outfielders. I love Anthony Santander. Like, he's a beast. Oh, I'll talk about Randy. That's a good one.
Oh, you're beating me to it. I made a video on Randy today, planning to drop it tomorrow now, because as I was literally about to hit send, like 6:30 or so, Sevy's a Met. So I'm like, okay, we're pushing that. Yeah, share your thoughts on Randy. Let's hear it.
He's available, and I know my pal Jack reported it, and then I confirmed it. Like, you will start to see over the next few days, like, all of the major outlets start to report that it's legit. Like they're definitely talking about trading him. I can't really speak on it, but I know they've had conversations with a few clubs. I bet he gets dealt. Like, it just sounds like they're trying to clear cash, and like they want to get ahead of it and not pay Tyler Glasnow $25 million. Like,
Tampa Bay trying to clear cash. What? Who would have thought?
I know. It's a crazy thought. Yeah. No, I know. I think he's going to get dealt. Like, that's where I'm at there. They're talking to, I know, two teams, but I'm not at liberty, at least now, to kind of speak on that. But, like, they are talking to teams about Randy Arozarena. It's probably likely he gets dealt. Glass sounds like a certainty, and I think there's like 7 teams when I asked today that are in, so I would watch that. Got
Could the
anything
Mets
else?
be players for Arozarena as we get a $2 donation here from Edward Flood? I know it's very premature because like these reports came out from Jack, and then you confirmed that again today. Like that's the first we're really hearing of it in the public eye. But just exactly as I explained in my video, and you guys will get a chance to see tomorrow most likely. He just checks off the boxes. Aside from his lack of defensive upside, which I know Stearns, I'm sure, is taking into account because he wants to upgrade defense this offseason, the bat-to-ball skills, the playoff moment, all these other factors I think make a lot of sense for this team and age. So where do you stand on a potential Mets
I mean,
pursuit here?
I see him in the same light. I see Luis Robert, who's probably a little bit better than him.
Yes.
They're premier bats, and they would help a lot. I haven't heard the Mets, like associated with them. The problem with Randy Arozarena and Luis Robert, you're talking about years of control here. It's not
Yep.
like this is a rental, which not necessarily is a problem because those are the types of guys that they're trying to land.
Yeah, especially Stearns. I
But
feel like that's what you'd want, right?
right. Now, the only problem is like they've talked about sustainability and using cash as a resource. Like, that's not what that is. Like,
Right.
that is entirely using prospects. And they've spoken about like that's not what they're trying to do. So I would keep an eye on those two. I haven't heard anything, especially Mets, pertaining to those two. Like, at least with Randy, like I know of a few teams that have called. Like the Mets are not one of those that I've heard. So I would say that's something to note. I mean, Luis Robert, like he's a superstar. I'm not convinced they deal him. Like that man is a stud.
They're
Like
not going to trade his ass, and they're going to regret it so much. There's
correct
no better
because it's
way
the
to
White Sox.
kickstart a rebuild by trading away far and away your most expensive asset with multiple years of control, a true 5-tool player. I mean, I personally, if I was in Stearns' shoes, that's an exception to give up everything except for Francisco Alvarez. Like you do what it takes to land someone like him because he can single-handedly change this organization.
He's one of my favorite players in baseball.
Oh,
Like,
of
I
course, he's
love
a
Luis
stud.
Robert. He's got pop. I mean, and that guy, when he connects with the baseball, it's like shit. Like
Yeah.
that, he's shadow that ball,
Yeah.
So he's just a fun player to watch. And I live in Chicago actually, so
There you
I've
go.
gotten to watch him hit some real tanks. So he's just a fun player to watch. But I'm trying to think. I mean, any other one hitters you got? I can see
No,
if I got
just some
any.
people had questions about, potential bullpen targets, the MPB guys, or whether that's Yuki Matsui, which we've heard nothing about to this point.
I
Yariel
haven't heard any.
Rodriguez, who the Mets did scout, but we don't know much beyond that. Those are Yariel especially, I could see going to a smaller market club and them kind of really maximizing his potential. I could be wrong, obviously, but when getting into the Matsuis and I'm gonna blank on his name. Was it? It's like, man, it's like they're sucking it. There's SUK in it. I'm just blanking on his name. I know someone said in the chat, so let me actually go up real quick and find out. Seriously, Joey Wendle, thank you for the donation. Tank us. Yes, we're being serious. Any chance so are the Mets? There's certainly a chance, but I don't think anyone's seen here saying the Mets are a front runner. This looks like it's the Yankees' game to lose until we find out further reporting, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think they're the only player. Like, I think there's other players.
Absolutely.
I also think it's like slower progressing. Like from what I've heard, like I don't think Soto's about to go like tomorrow. Like I think they're going to take their time here and make sure like they're smart, diligent. They try to get everyone involved to kind of run up that bidding. But I don't think there's anything quick there. But like I would watch the Yankees. Like the reporting's out there. Like they really like him. It feels like a fit. Team to watch would be the Yankees. But like teams like the Mariners, like I would just keep them in the back of your mind.
Truthfully, if Soto does get traded to the Yanks, I don't hate that if one, they part with potentially a Dominguez, which I know will be a tall task. They're starting high. It's a very real possibility he doesn't end that way, and or a Volpe, and Soto ends up walking a year from now. Like the best case scenario would be Soto gets traded to the Yanks, and then he signs with the Mets next offseason.
And that's what Andy was saying. That's what he was reporting that like I forget who it was, Bob. I'm blanking on the last name, but like the Yankees are fully aware that he wants to hit the market, and if they were to trade for him, it would literally just be for the 1 year. Like, and they know that. So that could always change, right? Like one huge offer, it changes that. But I mean, he's a Boris client. Like, those guys like to see the market. That's usually how that goes.
Right.
So,
Okay.
I mean, I feel like we've run through most of them, right? I'm
Yeah.
trying to give out any last kind of tidbits.
The last thing is woo, suck, go. I'm imagining you don't have any inside info
Got
on his
nothing
market.
on him.
No,
I
and that's
got
okay.
nothing.
Yeah, just another talented guy coming over. Not sure if it's the MPB or KBL. I need to do my homework. He falls in the category of reliever targets potentially that I plan on discussing. I will say this though, it's a fascinating offseason versus years prior with a lot of very talented guys either coming from Korea or Japan. Like this is, I feel, a more prominent market in their regard versus years past. Like yes, you had Senga last year and Yoshida, and that was big in its own right. And then you had Seiya Suzuki the year prior and Tomoyuki Sugano, who ended up not coming here, even though he was teetering the idea for a bit, and the
Right.
Mets seemed like a potential landing spot there. It's nice though, especially after the success the Mets have had with Senga. I'm like very open and interested. Like Jung-Hoo Lee is a guy where if the Mets were in need of a very good slap hitting corner outfielder, I'd say yes. But the last thing that I feel that the Mets need is another slap hitter.
Right.
They need power in those corners, so
Sure.
I'm not even really considering them in that market. But yeah, no, it's just final kind of remarks I'll share is it's been nice to see more very talented guys coming over from these respective leagues.
I'll give you. We didn't talk about Pete, so I'll do a quick Pete
Okay.
plan with Pete. I think that the current lean is no trade, no extension, and they're probably comfortable letting him hit the market like they did with Nemo and taking that route. Like we will win the bidding if we think it's reasonable. I think they have made it known like they will take calls on Pete Alonso. If they get wowed and they feel like there's so much value that they need to take it, they will take it. If the extension talks become like really realistic, they get close on numbers, they will extend him. They will let the market do the talking. They will let the teams that are interested do the talking. They will let Boris negotiate with Stearns, and if they can find something fair, they will extend him. That's where they stand. I'll talk about right field really quickly. Like, I don't know as a fan/reporter if you can count on Starling Marte in 2024. Like,
Doesn't
I think
take a
there's
rocket scientist to figure that one out.
yeah. I mean, you start wondering about players like Teoscar Hernandez. Like, I feel like that's someone that would fit the bill to some extent. I have not heard personally that they're like very interested in him, but just kind of logically looking at options here, that feels like someone who would make sense. They need some outfielders. Like they need someone who can play left field, and if they like are seriously trying to like compete, which I think they want to field at least like a wild card team in 2024, like not necessarily like World Series favorite. Like they probably need someone in case Starling Marte like potentially inevitably doesn't live up to like the hopes that he goes
I'm really
back to
not
what
even
he
counting
was.
on him at all for the upcoming season. I hope the
Right.
Mets are operating the same, so that way if he is healthy, and it'll be like,
It's
oh,
a
awesome,
plus.
like sweet,
Right.
yes, yeah, that's where I stand on his front currently. But final thing I'll share with you, and then we'll wrap things up because we have hit the hour mark. It's went quick because we're having fun with these discussions on all the latest Mets news and rumors. Again, thank you all so much, everyone chiming in. We've had great viewership tonight. Continue to smash that like and subscribe button, and please make sure to follow Michael Marino on Twitter for all your latest, not only Mets news, but MLB news as a whole, and all the latest rumors and updates there at Marino MLB. Someone did ask in the chat, this will be final question we answer tonight, so apologies for all the ones we missed. What about the Mets going out of their way to try to get a guy in Matt Moore, who played with 3 teams this past year and stayed pretty good for the most part? Matt Moore has been a starter turn reliever. It feels like yesterday he was a starter in the Phillies rotation in 2021, and since then he has turned into a pretty nice reliever with the Texas Rangers last year. Looked sharp, wanted him big time, ended up going to the Angels this past year. It was parted with multiple times. I know he went to the Guardians along with Giolito. I'm forgetting what other team he was with this year, but a guy with a 2.56 ERA this season and 52 innings pitched, over 10K per nine to 2.5 walks per nine. A lot to like about Matt Moore, and it certainly would welcome another productive lefty in this pen along with Brooks Raley.
Absolutely. I mean, I think they know they need lefties. They're showing interest in 2 lefty starters. So, like, absolutely. Like, I think they know they want lefties to have flexibility in the bullpen. I'm not going to tell you, like, I've heard specific Matt Moore to the Mets rumor. Like, I have yet to hear or ask about that, to be honest with you. but like totally, like he fits the bill of like someone Stearns would like. Um, you know, Stearns is really great at taking swings on guys like Matt Moore and having success. So like those are the types of guys I would have focus on. Like the same way I would tell you, like, look at Manuel Margot, look at Kevin Kiermaier, Justin Turner. Like these are guys he's shown interest in the past where they have kind of like upside, higher upside plays and maybe they're bargain value plays. Like that's definitely one of the markets that he likes to shop in and has, at least with the Brewers. And clearly, like that's what they were thinking with Severino, maybe Wendle. Like, we'll see, But I think getting value for his money is something that David Stearns is still trying to do with the Mets.
Yes, and I think that is in part why the Mets were enamored by the idea of acquiring him. It wasn't just, oh, this guy is from New York, grew up a diehard Mets fan. It goes in hand with his track record as assistant GM with the Astros, all the great work he did during his time in Milwaukee. So, and especially being able to do great productive work on a limited payroll. The Mets are not going to be on a limited payroll, but they're not also going to spend like drunken sailors every offseason because we're not going to be able to have sustained success. We've already learned that the hard way in recent years. Who in God's name wants that Starling Marte contract right now, right? Who wanted that James McCann contract not long after it started? Like, the Mets have been shelling out a lot of money, but you can make a rightful argument that they have not been great in doing so. Like, when you really look at it, Francisco Lindor, that extension, awesome. They've made some solid smaller moves. Mark Canha, a productive multi-year signing. Eduardo Escobar, had his flashes, even though that, there was certainly left a bit to be desired. So you look at a lot of the moves the Mets have made since Cohen became owner, as they're just trying to get a structure down, a system to have sustained success. I feel like now we're finally going to start to get it. And in doing so, it may come off at times a little underwhelming for fans because they're accustomed to saying, why aren't the Mets going all in on every single player, right?
Right.
So,
that's how it goes, right? And that's what I was saying. Like, they're going to need these 1-year holdovers. Like, I think they're really eyeing 2025 as like when you look at like the World Series favorites, like they're 1, 2, or 3. Like that's probably where they are in 2025. But in 2024, like they're going to sign guys that are like Luis Severino, who like you can't necessarily bank on, but they could be high upside plays. And you hope in 2 years, you spend on a big pitcher, you get a big third baseman, and like over those 2 off seasons, you collectively add guys and slowly fill your holes with legitimate options you can count on. And then right when you start in 2025, like you don't have questions about the roster, hopefully, right? Less questions about the roster. Kind of similar in line with like the last 2 years where you felt like they plugged all their holes. You're not going to feel like that this year. Like there's probably going to be some guys that you're like, can he really do that job? Like, is Manuel Margot really going to be a great fourth outfielder? Like, those are probably questions you're going to be asking yourself. But in 2 years, I'm not sure that that's going to be the same.
Right. And I agree with you. And funny enough, Joel Sherman coming out with, of course, he has to come out with an article like this, stating the following: Stearns is familiar with operating in both baseball worlds, trying to be good now without imperiling the future, but he has never done it with the financial resources he has now. Correct. Yes, anyone following along knows exactly that. Thank you, Joel. I appreciate you reiterating that. Of course, he said it in that manner to cause a slight concern for fans that maybe are underwhelmed by the beginning of the offseason, considering the Mets haven't signed Shohei Ohtani, haven't traded for Juan Soto, and haven't acquired everyone else and their mother. So it's just funny how we talk about these things. We see it, and then it was perfect timing actually by Joel to see that. But I think that's going to really wrap it for the show. This was a great conversation, Michael. Thank you so much for coming on. Definitely had a blast talking with you. For everyone that doesn't know Michael Marino, again, he does a fantastic job as an independent MLB reporter. You can check him out at Twitter at Marino MLB. Michael, any final closing thoughts before we get out of here?
I appreciate you having me on, man. I had a great chat. I appreciate the invitation. Thank you so much, man.
Of course. Thank you. Shout out to everyone watching live and on replay. Continue to smash those buttons. Stay tuned. My night may consist of doing a short video on Jolie Wendle, because that's exactly how I want to spend the rest of my evening. Aside from that, wishing you all the best. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay tuned for consistent content pretty much every single day this week as news